You're welcome. We did some bad things. We designed a meritocracy designed around the skills we ourselves possess and rigged the game so we succeeded and everybody else failed. By age 12, American children of affluent kids are 4 grade levels above everybody else. By university age, rich kids are 77 times more likely to go to university or to Ivy League university than kids from poor schools. In adulthood, 54% of the people at elite workplaces went to the same 34 elite colleges. So we ended up creating a caste system. People with high school degrees die 9 years sooner than people with college degrees. People with high school degrees are 5 times more likely to have kids out of wedlock. People with high school degrees are 2.4 times more likely to say they have no friends. So we created a caste system, even though we pretend to be egalitarian. But the worst things we did were not material. America has a very strong economy. The worst things we did were spiritual. We privatized morality and destroyed the moral order. George Marsden is a great historian who said, what gave Martin Luther King's rhetoric its power was the sense there's a moral order built into the universe. That if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. If segregation is not wrong, nothing is wrong. We took that essential moral order that holds people together, and we decided it's up to you to find your own truth, find your own values. Back in 1955, a great American journalist named Walter Lippmann understood this was going to be a big problem. He said, if what is right and wrong depends on what each individual feels, then we are outside the bounds of civilization. And so, without a strong moral order, it's hard to have trust. It's hard to find your meaning in life. And so America, and I think Britain too, has become a sadder society. Rise in mental health, rise in suicide. 45% of high school students say they are persistently hopeless and despondent. Since 2000, the number of Americans without close personal friends is up by 4-fold. Since 2000, the number of people who say they are in the lowest happiness category is up by 50%. We've just become sadder. The third thing the educated elite has done, and this may not please you, is we produced Donald Trump. Some people think Donald Trump is a populist. Donald Trump and Elon Musk went to the University of Pennsylvania and Ivy League school and became billionaires. J.D. Vance went to Yale. Pete Hegseth went to Princeton and Yale. Stephen Miller went to Duke. Fox News types like Laura Ingraham went to Dartmouth. And they represent the educated elite. And the key factor of the educated elite is that they're not pro-conservative, they're anti-left. They don't have a positive vision, a conservative vision for society. They just want to destroy the institutions that the left now dominates. And this means, in the first place, they're astoundingly incompetent. I have a lot of sympathy with what drove people to vote for Trump, but I'm telling you, as someone who's on the front row to what's happening, do not hitch your wagon to that star. Thank you. You're supposed to boo.
Hey, what's up, fam? How you doing? I hope you're doing super great from whatever you're watching us from. Now, for the longest time, there has been lies that I've been told for the longest time to the Americans, specifically black people of America, right? The lie of meritocracy, or the myth of meritocracy, being told that, you know, if you work hard, everything's just gonna be fine. If you study hard, you're gonna get that college degree and you're gonna secure a bigger job and you'll be the best in your place that you are, right? A couple of things. When black people try to push by go learning this further education, by go learning, pursuing all their dreams, they're being met by this harsh lie that you're not trying hard enough. Maybe you're not putting a lot of effort, while in reality, they're putting effort. And they start one thing that they're not telling black people. It is that they had already rigged the system against them. And for the past 400 years, this is something that has been happening. The system was rigged like 400 years ago. Remember, it's competing with somebody who is on steroids while you're not, while your one leg is sick, you're limping and competing with somebody who is on steroids, right? So it's like that. And they want you to be successful. And if you're not successful, they're telling you like, you're not, I mean, maybe you're not just putting enough effort. For the longest time, I know America has always been great to everyone who is working hard. While it's true, it's great to some folks, especially white folks, successful ones, but they are not telling you that part of the truth, the meritocratic lie, the meritocracy, the myth of meritocracy. And today's video is going to be presented by David Brooks. David Brooks is an American social, cultural, and political commentator. He's also an author who talks about socioeconomic, political things that are happening in the United States, including contemporary things that are happening in the United States. So that being said, it means that he gives a critical perspective first by committing to the truth that they have benefited from the same very system that undermined black folks, or at least sold lies to a lot of Americans who suffered a lot are black people, right? And that's one thing that all of them not mentioning even in their speeches. But here I am today with a presentation about the same thing that I'm gonna be showing you. I have my tablet over here that I use for my research and presentations that help me and guide me in every point that I make. Now, so that being said, I want us to watch this video. It is so eye-opening, and it's going to be giving you a perspective on how all these things have been happening. As you know, these are presented Jindoki Stories, and I hope you find. For those who are watching us for the first time, I'll ask you to subscribe to the channel, join our membership, really get to see what we can offer you. For those who are supporting me through my Cash App account, for those who are sending me super thanks, man, I'm really appreciative for the thing that you do. If you wish to buy me a coffee, you can check out my Cash App account. It's on my bio. And also, for those who are sending me super thanks, I'm highly appreciative. So I don't want to say much. Let's get right into it. And I'll be back with my commentary as usual.
So I have a confession to make. I'm a member of the educated elite. My parents were historians of Victorian England. Our turtles, when I was growing up, were named Disraeli and Gladstone. The culture in our home was think Yiddish, act British. Very stiff upper lip, we showed no emotion. And then when I was 7, I read a book called Paddington the Bear and decided I want to become a writer. And that was central to my identity ever since. In high school, which you call like fourth form or something like that, I wanted to date a woman named Bernice, and she didn't want to date me. She dated some other guy. And I remember thinking, what is she thinking? I write way better than that guy. And so those were my values. And then when I was 18, the admissions officers at Columbia, Wesleyan, and Brown universities decided I should go to the University of Chicago. And some of you may know the saying about Chicago, it's where fun goes to die. My favorite saying about Chicago, it's a Baptist school where atheist professors teach Jewish students St. Thomas Aquinas. And so it's very educated elite, and I fit right in. I had a double major at Chicago in history and celibacy while I was there. And then after school, I got a job where an educated elite person should get a job. I was hired to be the conservative columnist of the New York Times, a job I likened to being the chief rabbi at Mecca. Not a lot of company there. And then I got a job on PBS, which is our PBS NewsHour, which is our version of Newsnight. And again, educated elite. We have a wonderful audience, somewhat seasoned. And so if a 93-year-old lady comes up to me at the airport, I know what she's going to say. I don't watch your program, but my mother loves it. So we members of the educated elite did some good things. We created the internet brunch and mocktails. You're welcome. We did some bad things. We designed a meritocracy designed around the skills we ourselves possess and rigged the game so we succeeded and everybody else failed. By age 12, American children of affluent kids are 4 grade levels above everybody else. By university age, rich kids are 77 times more likely to go to university or to Ivy League university than kids from poor schools. In adulthood, 54% of the people at elite workplaces went to the same 34 elite colleges. So we ended up creating a caste system. People with high school degrees die 9 years sooner than people with college degrees. People with high school degrees are 5 times more likely to have kids out of wedlock. People with high school degrees are 2.4 times more likely to say they have no friends. So we created a caste system, even though we pretend to be egalitarian. But the worst things we did were not material. America has a very strong economy. The worst things we did were spiritual. We privatized morality and destroyed the moral order. George Marsden is a great historian who said, what gave Martin Luther King's rhetoric its power was the sense there's a moral order built into the universe. That if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. If segregation is not wrong, nothing is wrong. We took that essential moral order that holds people together, and we decided it's up to you to find your own truth, find your own values. Back in 1955, a great American journalist named Walter Lippmann understood this was going to be a big problem. He said, if what is right and wrong depends on what each individual feels, then we are outside the bounds of civilization. And so, without a strong moral order, it's hard to have trust. It's hard to find your meaning in life. And so America, and I think Britain too, has become a sadder society. Rise in mental health, rise in suicide. 45% of high school students say they are persistently hopeless and despondent. Since 2000, the number of Americans without close personal friends is up by 4-fold. Since 2000, the number of people who say they are in the lowest happiness category is up by 50%. We've just become sadder. The third thing the educated elite has done, and this may not please you, is we produced Donald Trump. Some people think Donald Trump is a populist. Donald Trump and Elon Musk went to the University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League school, and became billionaires. J.D. Vance went to Yale. Pete Hegseth went to Princeton and Yale. Stephen Miller went to Duke. Fox News types like Laura Ingraham went to Dartmouth. And they represent the educated elite. And the key factor of the educated elite is that they're not pro-conservative, they're anti-left. They don't have a positive vision, a conservative vision for society. They just want to destroy the institutions that the left now dominates. And this means, in the first place, they're astoundingly incompetent. I have a lot of sympathy with what drove people to vote for Trump, but I'm telling you, as someone who's on the front row to what's happening, do not hitch your wagon to that star. Thank you. You're supposed to boo. Pete Hegseth gave away our bargaining chips with Putin before we even had negotiations. Elon Musk has 25-year-olds firing people who are controlling our nuclear codes. It's like Sam Bankman-Fried got control of our nuclear arsenal. Second, elite narcissism causes them to eviscerate every belief system they touch. Conservatives believe in healthy societies are built on healthy institutions. They're anti-institutionals. Conservatives believe in steady and gradual change, Edmund Burke. They're disruption. Conservatives believe in constitutional government. Donald Trump says, I alone can fix this. Conservatives believe in moral norms. They're destroying moral norms. The other belief system that they are destroying is Judeo-Christian faith. Judeo-Christian faith is based on service to the poor, service to the immigrant, service to the stranger. I went to Namibia, South Africa throughout the 1990s and 2000s, and I watched people die of AIDS. Then I went back with my friend Mike Gerson, and I saw those 25 million lives saved. I saw people living lives of dignity. And so what's the first thing Donald Trump did? He eviscerated that program. My friends in America are conservative evangelicals in government who want to fight sex trafficking, poverty. They want to preserve national security. Donald Trump is declaring war on those Christians. So I've described 3 different things we educated elites brought you. We destroyed the social fabric through inequality. We destroyed the moral fabric through privatizing morality. And we destroyed the institutional fabric, what's happening right now. How can we come back? Well, we already are. I often ask people, tell me about a time that made you who you are as a human being. And they never say, I went on a fantastic vacation in Hawaii. They never say that. They say, I went through a really hard time. The death of someone, the loss of someone, moving away from home, entering a new vocation. Paul Tillich, the theologian, said those moments of suffering interrupt your life and they remind you you're not the person you thought they were. They carve through the floor of your basement of your soul, and they reveal a cavity below, and they carve through that floor, and they reveal a cavity below. In moments of suffering, you see yourself in a more deep way than you ever did before. And in those moments of suffering, you can either be broken or you can be broken open. And people who are transformed decide, I'm going to be broken open. And nations that are going to be transformed by moments of suffering say, we're going to be broken open. We've been through periods of national crisis before. Across the world, nations have constantly hit a spiritual and cultural crisis and then revives. This country, between 1820 and 1848. I was here in the 1980s. Britain recovered in the 1980s. Australia in the 1970s, Germany and Japan after World War II, South Korea in the 1980s, Rwanda after 1994, Chile in the 1990s. My own country, we've done this again and again. We've grown not through a happy, merry ride. We've grown through a process of rupture and repair when society and culture is in crisis and we figure it out. 1770s, the old colonial order had to go. Sorry. 1830s, the East Coast elite had too much power. Andrew Jackson brought in an era of populism. 1860s, the slavery order had to go. Abraham Lincoln brought forth national redemption. 1890s, we had failed at industrialization. We had a civic renaissance of all these civic organizations that filled in the hole and created a sane society. 1960s, the conformist culture of the 1950s had to go. And we had the changes that came there. The temptation of those who don't read history is to think this time is different. We're in another period of rupture and repair. We have spiritual resources. I'm a conservative. I believe that we are inheritors of a great spiritual legacy, what Michael Oakeshott called the Great Conversation. We have the voice of Genesis, that we're all made in God's image. That's the foundation of democracy. We have the voice of Exodus, that we wander through the wilderness and eventually get to the promised land. We have the voice of Jesus, even if you're not Christian. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor in spirit. That's a source of great strength. In my country, we have the voice of Alexander Hamilton. Poor boys and girls should rise and succeed. We have the voice of Edmund Burke, that we should be modest about what we can know because culture is really complicated and we should operate on society the way we would operate on our Father, gradually and carefully. We have the voice of John Stuart Mill. We value diversity and pluralism because it leads to what he called adventures in living. When you have a spiritual, moral, and relational crisis, the job is to shift the culture. And we are moving, I think, from a hyper-individualistic culture the last 60 years toward a communal culture. I didn't like the social justice movement, but it was an attempt to find community. I'm not particularly a big fan of MAGA, but it's an attempt to find community. Culture change is about a shifting of the heart. It's about providing new answers to the question, how should I live my life? It's about soulcraft. And it isn't done the way you do political change. Culture change works differently. It's done, as Walter Bagehot put it, if you want to win people over, enjoy the things that conservatives enjoy. Culture changes when a creative minority find a beautiful way to live. Culture changes when a small group of people find a better way to live and the rest of us copy. That's the story of the early church. It's the story of the Clapham sect. They weren't my cup of tea, but it's the story of Bloomsbury. I was mentored by William F. Buckley. It's the story of the conservative movement in America. Culture changes on a personal level when we relate to each other with attentive and generous gaze. Simone Weil said, attention is the purest form of generosity. Culture changes on a spiritual level. T.S. Eliot said, you can't create a system so perfect that the people in it don't have to be good. It's when you put moral formation at the center of your society. And finally, it happens at the civic level. When 1,000 voices and 1,000 different organizations create civic institutions that provide healing and relationship in society. That's how culture changes. I was at a bar about 2 months after October 7th. And if you had seen me there, you would have thought, sad guy drinking alone. I call it reporting. So I'm scrolling through Twitter, and it has all these brutal images from the Middle East. But I come across a video of James Baldwin, and he says, you know, there isn't as much humanity as one would like, but there's enough. And what you've got to remember is that when you walk down the street, every person you meet, you could be that person. That could be you. You could be that monster. You could be that saint. And you have to decide who you're going to be. Now, James Baldwin was treated shabbily by my society because of his race and other things. But he had a right to be bitter. But even in that circumstance, he uttered the ultimate humanist statement. You could be that person could be you. And the phrase that rang in my head when I heard that was defiant humanism. That even in harsh and brutal times, we're called upon to see each other in the fullest, deepest, and most respectful way that God imagined that they would be seen. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to the channel. You've all heard him talk about all these meritocratic lies that for the longest time, this is something that they have been telling a lot of black folks out there. In my presentation, I also have the same, but a little bit perspective that I'm going to be adding on top of what David Brooks has talked about. The myth of meritocracy. How the system is rigged against black people. Meritocracy first is the belief that success is based on talent, effort, and achievement rather than structural advantages, which has long been central narrative in Western societies, particularly in the United States. Now, this idea suggests that hard work alone determines one socioeconomic standing, but historical and contemporary evidences debunks this myth, especially for black people. Despite claims of equal opportunity, system barriers ranging from discriminatory policies to institutional biases have ensured that black individuals remain disproportionately disadvantaged. The illusion of meritocracy not only masks these structural inequalities, but also justifies the continued economic and social marginalization of black people. Now, historically, systemic racism has entrenched disparities that undermined any notion of level playing field. From slavery to Jim Crow laws, black people were systemically excluded from wealth accumulation, quality education, and political representation. While white Americans were granted access to land, government subsidies, and economic programs, such as the New Deal and the GI Bill, black individuals were largely excluded from these benefits. This historical exclusion created an intergenerational wealth gap, making it significantly harder for black families to compete economically with their white counterparts, regardless of merit or effort. They had an upper hand, right, before even black folks. As I said earlier, it's like competing with somebody who is on steroids while your right leg that, steps on the ground family is somehow amputated, or is somehow you can't move well, right, because of maybe a stink, or maybe you are hit by a nail. So it's so hard for you to compete with this person. And this is a perfect example between white folks and black folks, because all they'll ever come and tell you is that maybe you're not working so much hard, maybe you're not putting enough effort as you should be, right? While they're not telling you the same very structures that are keeping them rich while you are. Now, the education system, often touted as the great equalizer, is another space where meritocracy fails black Americans. Public schools funding is primarily based on local property taxes, meaning that schools in predominantly black neighborhoods, which often have lower property values due to redlining and housing discrimination, receive fewer resources. This results in underfunded schools, larger class sizes, outdated textbooks, and fewer extracurricular opportunities. Furthermore, systemic biases in standardized testing, gifted programs, and disciplinary policies disproportionately disadvantages black students, reinforcing cycles of inequality that persists into adulthood. So this is something that happens, and I feel like it's important for us to, always talk about it. And why is it that the schools around black places, these things happen? Also, there's a problem that black people have. We spend a lot of money outside our community. and we invest a lot of money outside our community, right? And this means that there is no inflow of money in the black community. So this is a problem when it comes to tax revenue that can be used to build and bring all these facilities that, makes it good for students to study in these places, right? So this is something that really happens. Now, also, higher education also reflects the lie of meritocracy. Elite universities claim to admit students based on academic excellence, yet legacy admissions overwhelming favors white students, while affirmative action policies designed to level the playing field have consistently been challenged, right? The rising costs of college education disproportionately affect black students right, who are more likely to rely on student loans due to racial wealth gap. Even after obtaining degrees, black graduates face hiring discrimination, wage disparities, and barriers to professional advancements, providing that education alone is not enough to overcome systemic obstacles. And this is something that happens for the longest time. You've seen it. Also, when we talk about that, we also go and check the labor market. The labor market further exposes the illusion of meritocracy. Numerous studies have shown that black job applications are less likely to be hired than white applicants with identical qualifications. Discriminatory hiring practices, implicit biases, and the lack of access to professional networks prevent black individuals from securing high-paying jobs. Even in corporate environments, black employees face barriers to promotion, often being passed over for leadership roles in favor of less qualified white colleagues. Now, the concept of merit-based hiring is undermined by the persistence of racial bias, proving that effort and skill alone do not determine career success. Also, wealth inequality is another glaring contradiction to the meritocratic ideal. The racial wealth gap in the US is directly a result for centuries of economic exclusion, from slavery to discriminatory housing policies. While white families have been able to accumulate and pass down wealth across generations, black families have been systematically denied these opportunities. Even when black individuals achieve financial success, they often lack the safety nets and generational wealth that cushion economic downturns for white Americans. The notion that hard work leads to prosperity is deeply flawed when systemic barriers prevent black people from accessing the same economic advantages as their white counterparts. The criminal justice system further exposes how meritocracy is an illusion. Black individuals are disproportionately policed, arrested, and incarcerated, often for minor infractions, while that white individuals receive leniency for. Mandatory minimum sentencing, cash bail systems, and racial profiling ensure that black people face harsher consequences, limiting their social and economic mobility. A criminal record can bar individuals from employment, housing, and even voting rights, reinforcing a circle of disenfranchisement that contradicts the principles of equal opportunity. Also, home ownership, a cornerstone of economic stability, is another area where systemic racism shatters the myth of meritocracy. Redlining, discriminatory lending practices, and racial covenants have historically prevented black families from purchasing homes in high-value areas. Even today, black homeowners face higher mortgage interest rates and lower property valuations, making it harder for build wealth through real estate. The idea that financial success is purely a result of individual effort ignores these deeply ingrained structural barriers that continues to disadvantage black people. Right? Even in politics, where democracy supposedly ensures equal participation, systemic obstacles limit black representation. Voter suppression tactics, including gerrymandering, restrictive ID laws, and felony disenfranchisement, disproportionately target black communities. While political engagement is often framed as pathway to change, structural barriers ensure that Black voices remain marginalized and in decision-making process. The meritocratic ideal collapses when access to political power is systemically restricted along a racial line. And it is right to say that meritocracy is a convenient myth that upholds racial inequality while absolving those in power of responsibility of systemic oppression. By promoting the idea that success is purely based on effort, society shifts the blame onto Black individuals rather than addressing the institutional barriers that hinder their progress. Recognizing and dismantling these structures is essential to achieve true equality, true equity. Until then, the narrative of meritocracy will remain a smokescreen that justifies racial disparities and prevents meaningful change. And that's how it has always been, and that's how it's still been. So the question to you, do you think America is a meritocratic country? Right? So that's the question that I'll pose to you lastly when I'm leaving. Now, this is a presenter, Jintok Stories, and I'm hoping to see you on my next video. Kindly be safe, and I pray for those who are supporting this channel for us to grow and keep growing, right? So, but until then, I'm going to be seeing you on my next video. Until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.